how we can derive value from waste and can turn it into a valuable resource, which in turn helps us reduce our dependence on virgin materials, efficiency, and in the other aspects of creating a circular economy. Today, the topic of our discussion will be circular economy and climate change, how circularity can help us reduce our carbon footprint. So before we start, I would like to welcome the speakers and the moderator of today's session and introduce them to you. I welcome Mr. Rochelle Dharmpal, sector expert, circular economy for the German Ministry of Finance and Climate Affairs. Mr. Rochelle works closely with both local and German partners to promote latest and leading edge investment in circular economy. Prior to this, he has been involved in analyzing energy markets, conducting research, and providing strategic advice to internal and external stakeholders, as well as leading development of key strategic projects aligned to the South African government's Industrial Policy Action Plan and New Development Plan, and the financial aspects of infrastructure and energy projects, including project financing, risk analysis, and financial modeling, amongst others. He's also currently a member of the Technical Advisory to Circular Innovation South Africa, CISA. Welcome, Mr. Rochelle. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
That's great. Then we have Mr. Nitin Mishra, Lead Corporate EHS and Sustainability Senior Manager in Havels India Limited. Currently, he is handling the sustainability reporting, BRSR, driving an implementation of sustainability ESG agenda in Havels manufacturing units, warehouses, offices, supply chain partners, implementation of water, energy, waste reduction projects, sustainable packaging, carbon footprint calculation, and EPR implementation. Nitin has been awarded as Young Environmental Leader of the Year 2022 by National Achiever Reorganization Forum. Then we have our third speaker of the day is Mr. Chris White. He's the founder of Use It, MD of Chris White and Associates, South African chapter lead at SDG Africa and director of the African Circular Economy Network, ACEN, and co-founder of the ACEN Foundation. Since 1992, Chris has been involved in environmental and sustainable project developments across Africa and channeled his focus into waste from 1999. He founded and headed Use It, the waste materials recovery industry development program in Durban, South Africa, from 2009 to 2020, facilitating more than 2,600 jobs in the waste and recycling sector in that time, leveraging 4.5 times their funding in landfill savings to municipality and an additional 10 times that funding in commercial project development. This created a model for green economic development and innovation in South Africa that worked. Chris is recognized locally, nationally, and internationally through many awards and nominations. Very warm welcome to the webinar, Chris. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Now, let me introduce you to our last but not the least speaker, Mr. Raja Pradeep, Managing Director of Ostra Motors. He's an angel investor, startups mentor, tech entrepreneur, and a social entrepreneur with experience of building businesses in climate solutions, agriculture, food processing, emerging technologies, management and consulting services, besides many not-for-profit activities in education and sustainable development. Mr. Pradeep has 18 plus years of vast experience in companies like L&T, Reliance Industries, Vedanta, Aditya Birla, P&G India, Britannia Industries, and recently as a Vice President of Patanjali Group. He's an engineer with post-graduation in construction management and also holds general management from IIM Bangalore. Welcome, Mr. Pradeep. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Surabhi and team.
Thank you, sir. Now I'm handing over the session to our moderator, Dr. Sudhanshu Joshi. He is the coordinator of PM Gati Shakti Center of Excellence, School of Management, Doon University. Before I let him lead the discussion, let me introduce him to you all. Dr. Sudhanshu holds a PhD in Supply Chain Management and is a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and Discipline Agile Scrum Master. He's a visiting professor at the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia, and has a 19-hour index with 1200 plus citations from 60 plus publications as per Scopus database. His research spans sustainable supply chains, artificial intelligence, circular economy, Industry 4.0, 5.0, and more. Thanks, Dr. Sudhanshu, for the collaborative efforts that you are making, and over to you now.
So much, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. And ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, esteemed guest, I'm honored to welcome you all in the virtual discussion. And as we know that today's discussion, am I audible clearly? My voice is clear, right? Am I clearly visible and able to speak? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you are.
All right. So welcome you all again. And I'm so glad and thankful to the ICCE for joining hand with us at Doon University. And as we know that today's discussion on circular economy and the climate change, and we are fortunate enough that we have the panel of experts today. Those are about to shed light on how circularity can play a very important role in reducing the carbon footprints. And before we dive into the discussion, let's brief set the stage. As we know, the circular economy is a concept focused on reducing waste, recycling material, and extending the lifespan of the products. It's not just about the environmental responsibility, but also to enhance the critical, tools for fighting the climate change also. So today's discussion is primarily based on the theme of, how the circularity and climate change, fighting against the climate change is coming together. And I'm so glad and thankful to our distinguished panelists also. We have with us Nitin Mishra ji, who will guide us through the core principles on the circular economy and its potential benefits. We have Chris White with us, will provide us insights on how these principles are put into practices in the various industries. We have Rishal Dharampal ji, who will elaborate on the role of the government policies and regulation in the support to the circular economy. We have Raja Pradeep ji, who will discuss on the circular role of innovation and technology in advancing the circular solutions. So throughout the discussion, we will try to explore on how circularity, not only minimizing the waste, but also helping the lower down the carbon emission as well, and contribute to the fight against the climate change. So welcome you again in webinar topic, circular economy and climate change. How can circularity help in reducing the carbon footprints? So let me start with Nitin Mishra ji. Nitin sir, hi. So first question for you. As your role is into the lead corporate EHS and sustainability senior manager, what are the key sustainable initiatives that Havels India Limited is currently implementing to reduce its carbon footprints?
Correct. So thank you, Survi and Dr. Joshi, for asking the same question. So currently at Havels, we are working in the environmental sector in 4 categories. Like we are working for our fuel reduction, also working on the switching our grid supply to renewable supply for reduce the scope 2 emissions. Apart from solar, we are also working on the green fuel. So right now our DG and other equipment are running on the diesel and other fuel. So we are converting our diesel and other gases for the PNG and LNG, and we are searching on also opportunity for the biodiesel. So right now we are doing some trial to convert our old DG to run with the biodiesel. We can blending the 20% biodiesel and 80% the old diesel supply. So right now the resources are not available, but we are also searching the opportunity. Currently, this is on the trial basis. If you asking me on the climate reduction side, so we had already set a target key by 2026. Our all grid supply will be coming from the solar plant. So all in our manufacturing location, in our all branch offices, we are working on it, and we have our own solar team. So we had installed the solar plant. It will help us to reduce our scope 2 emission. Apart from scope 1 emission, we are also working on the biodiesel supply. We are removing the diesel and non-fossil fuel for our manufacturing plant. So mostly our manufacturing plant currently are running on the PNG and LNG. We are searching also opportunity for the bio CNG. So we are continuously discussing with vendor. Apart from for the reduction side, we are also doing lots of the plantation apart from our CSR project on the carbon accounting. So we had planted around 17 lakh tree plant at Madhya Pradesh location with the help of MPVR. And apart from also from the supply chain side, as you know, the importance of supply chain is very important. So right now we had started our supplier impact assessment. So right now 80% critical supplier we had provided the training how can they reduce their carbon emission, because their scope 1 scope 2 is our scope 3. So without the supply chain knowledge, supply chain intervention, we cannot achieve the net zero journey. So we had adopted the philosophy, we are working with the supply chain. So we had conducted around from the last 1 year, we had providing the training how can my supplier will working on the circularity topic, how can they use the renewables application. So we are helping us also providing some financial help to make their supply chain and make their emission for the reduction side. So these are the key points which we are working from the climate change. Apart from we are also working on water management. We have reduced our water consumption up to 25%. We are working on the other aspect, like we are making some lake and pond from the climate neutrality and water neutrality. We are also working in biodiversity side. So we had set a target by the end of 2025. We have the and no positive impact on the environment. So we are working on the biodiversity side. So apart from sustainable product, we had already set some target to currently we are doing LCA of our some product. So maybe in upcoming year the LCA concept will be integrated with our R&D team. So we can make a separate center for sustainability with our R&D team. So our right now our all researcher person they are working. How can we develop the sustainable product? How can we deliver the product who have the less energy efficient? So right now our major project have the energy efficient, but we are also working on the AC side and other manufacturing maybe after 4 to 5 years. So we are working on the same direction. We are starting our sustainability journey in 2012. So we are not on the top position, but we are working in very good, and maybe after 4 to 5 years our working approach is aligned with the net zero target. So we are also working on sustainable supply chain. We are working on sustainable product. We are working on sustainable manufacturing. We are working on sustainable packaging. So entire these 4 to 5 integration department is very important. So we had already set a target, and this year we had already published our target in public domain, and we are maybe in upcoming 1 and 2 year our net zero target will be published in public domain. So these are the some areas which we are working on it. Maybe in other segment we will discuss in detail what are the key factors. So this is the overall initiative we are working. Thank you.
Many thanks, Nitinji. It was really a great insightful on about the firm, how they are carrying up the responsibility towards the climate change. And this is something, it's really great to note down that the firms are now focusing more on their, social responsibility towards sustainability and climate change. We have with us Mr. Chris White, and he's a person with a great experience working with very, very diversified, projects. And his work with South African countries is very remarkable. So, sir, with your extensive experience in sustainable project management and development of the variety of projects on rural and energy sector particularly, could you please give us some insights on how circular economy has positively impacting the waste and recycling industry, particularly if you cite some examples from South African experience?
Thank you. Yes, I think that we're definitely seeing a change. So circular economy has kind of grown at long last past the limited scope of its understanding as a new buzzword for recycling or waste management. And we are looking at it from a multi-sectoral perspective. That's quite encouraging, particularly looking at the opportunities in terms of the different government departments that we have in South Africa, as well as the corporates and the knowledge sector as well, is understanding and grasping the opportunities around different multi-sectoral approaches towards circular economy. So we're seeing a number of differences in terms of alignment with regards to policy. Currently at the moment through the ASIN Foundation, we're busy working with the Department of Science and Innovation. So they're looking at a strategy for science, technology and innovation-based approaches through circular economy applications, specifically with a view to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And this has been a long fought, hard battle because often, and I think it's the same in India as it is pretty much anywhere else, is that a lot of government departments are pretty much isolated, and there's a silo mentality without the level of interaction between them. So aligning a key strategy between different departments really needs to unpack what is a circular economy and understand what the impacts and outcomes are from a transition to circular economy approaches. And we're seeing that through quite a large project development at the moment, kind of post COP26, which we've seen in South Africa, which is around the just energy transition. And there's a lot of international funding being promised towards these different components. However, I feel that a lot of it still is not quite in the just component. It's still looking at large-scale utility applications, which really is not going to help in terms of reducing the inequality in the country. So we need to start looking at innovation and technology at scaled approaches, which we can bring to the SMEs to empower a much wider scope of groupings to get involved in alternative and renewable energies. And I say alternative and renewable because renewable is not going to get us out of the energy fix that we're in. We need to look at a mix of baseload and renewable energy. And there's a variety of different opportunities. So there's a huge amount of work going on currently in South Africa with regards to green hydrogen and green steel applications, as well as looking at large-scale solar. Hydro is also another opportunity, but we need to look at the applications from a just perspective and address the technologies that are available at a scaled level that are available for a small business or for an industry to be able to run independently off the grid, looking at different applications, different technologies. And we need government to understand that so that they can embrace the opportunities of looking at creating that transition. And we are seeing that in a number of scaled versions, which is actually very encouraging because now it becomes not just theory, but there are now solutions and opportunities which where one can go and kick the tires and go and have a look and see what's happening and actually see these operations and work. So when we start to address the circular economy, it's not just about the energy side of things, but how does it then incorporate into infrastructure, manufacturing, water, wastewater management, even in terms of things like health and education and environment. So the circular principles are starting to really become embedded with regard to the sort of multi-sectoral systemic thinking and design. So I'm encouraged, but we've got a long way to go.
So true. So as Chris has highlighted on, SMEs, the role of SMEs and the roadmap of circularity should be clear with the government also. I wish to pass on a question to Mr. Rishal Dharmpalji. I have a question that most of the economies are into the movement towards a transition, rather, a moment of transition from linear economy to circular economy. For the fourth nation countries, how you look, what could be the critical, factors that the government and the practitioners and the industry should take care of while they are moving into the transition from linear to circular economy? Considering climate change as one of the factors.
Yeah, sure. I think the key to success is really for a transition to any circular kind of economy. It requires systemic change. And for this kind of systemic change, it involves multiple actors across various sectors. And along with that comes a shift in the mindset and the behaviors. So some of the key elements, for these kind of circular economy transition, particularly in the context of South Africa, but, like Chris has mentioned, it's the same context globally, is you need clear and concise policy and regulation. And for this is, you need a coherent and supportive policy framework. And you need an enabling environment with popular incentives, to adopt circular practices and discourage the linear ones. South Africa has come a long way in aligned to these circular economy initiatives, and we've spoken about some of them, such as, we have a national waste management strategy, there's a carbon tax act, there's a climate change bill, there's a green economy strategy. So various policies and regulations being been put in, along with, like my colleague Chris has mentioned, some of these international pledges with South Africa's agreement to the just energy transition. There's pledges and agreements that needs to be put in place. So it's imperative that government aligns itself with these initiatives. So that talks of the policy and regulation. Furthermore to that comes the innovation and technology. So there's this continuous need for innovation and adoption of technologies when embracing circular solutions. Not saying that there isn't solutions or technical solutions out there and available, but it's more about how about these solutions can be brought to market to ultimately end up with a commercially viable solution. So I've seen, and from my experience, there's several technologies available. There's lots of innovation happening on the academic side or entrepreneurial side, but it's more about bringing these solutions to bankability so that it's economically viable. Sometimes when in these industries, when they're in the infancy phase, it is, and I mentioned this earlier when I spoke of the policy and the need for incentives to adopt some of these practices. It's important for government to create that enabling environment, and sometimes from the likes of development funders or multilateral agencies to provide typical concessionary funding or grant funding to enhance, to basically stifle the industry, not stifle the industry, but rather to promote the industry. So when we talk to this innovation and technology, that this is where I align to these incentives or grants to basically to promote some of these new industries. So South Africa has a very strong potential for innovation and technology, and we have really strong partners. The CSIR, in particular, which is a state-owned entity, has been at the forefront, along with some of our other industries like technology innovation agencies that promotes and encourages the promotion of new and novel technology and the development of IP. So I've spoken of the innovation and technology. Furthermore, it comes to collaboration and coordination. And this cuts across all stakeholders, both in the public and private sector. And it's talking to large business, small business, consumers, civil society, academia, and most importantly, or as importantly, government as well. And this fosters this common vision and understanding of circular economy. And we have various initiatives and examples, such as be it in our Western Cape province, there's an industrial symbiosis plan. Our Gauteng province has a circular economy plan. Similarly, the KwaZulu-Natal. So at provincial level, you're seeing a lot of these innovative programs and initiatives taking place, and along now with private industries and private industry associations that's driving the growth in the sector. And finally, I think it's just education and awareness. So it's raising awareness and building capacity amongst different segments in society, and particularly for us in South Africa, where we're faced with the high levels of unemployment, and especially amongst the youth. It's encouraging that growth. And we all know that SMEs in particular, again, like my colleague has mentioned, are some of the biggest drivers of growth and the biggest promoters of employment in the sector. So it's important to create that awareness and those opportunities for these kind of industries to help achieve these kind of growths in there. So thanks again. We'll take questions later in the Q&A session. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Rashid. We have with us Raja Pradeep, and with a very diversified background across variety of sectors. He witnessed climate solutions and food processing as the key area he worked on. And sir, can you share some example on projects where the circular economy principles, which signifies the more on the how the environmental impact can be reduced down, right? So through your experience in variety of sectors, can you please explain us on how circular economy principles can help reducing the environmental impact, particularly the climate change?
Thank you, Sudhanshuji, for having me. Yeah, it's a great question. And currently, I'm managing director of Astra Motors as well as the managing director of Best Group. Best Group is actually into climate change mitigation solutions. Astra Motors is India's longest range e-bikes manufacturer, electric bicycles, whereas Best Group is currently working on 10 different kind of climate change mitigation solutions whose main aim is aim is to go towards a net zero economy through decarbonization principles, right? So the question you asked me about the circular economy, right? I mean, we have integrated all the principles of circular economy in our organizations, wherein, see, the concept of a circular economy, it represents a significant departure from the traditional linear economic model. You asked me about my experience. I mean, Surabhi has already introduced me, wherein she mentioned about companies like L&T, Reliance, Vedanta. So these are all India's topmost multinational corporations, and they are topmost companies in various sectors like infrastructure, oil and gas, airports, metals, mining, FMCG, etc. And unfortunately, these industries are the most polluting and the most carbon emitting industries, right? So there is a huge transition that is made by me from a obviously, I mean, polluting industries. I mean, I was a project head and the procurement head for these projects, which are ranging from $1 billion to $3 billion. And obviously, if I take an example like oil and gas, or a carbon intensive sector like metals and mining, I need not mention about the amount of carbon emissions that actually they get into the atmosphere, right? So taking from, understanding how these industries work and the kind of pollution and the kind of carbon emissions that they do, I have learned a lot and have decided to venture into startup companies which will focus more on sustainability and the circular economy principles integrated with them. So when I say circular economy principles, we are mindful about integrating not only the 3R concept, that is reduce, reuse, or recycle. We have in fact figured out integrating the latest 9R framework in whatever the things that we do. So when I say 9R framework, it is all about, I mean, we categorize them into, we categorize them into three things, like, I mean, how we make responsible use and manufacturing of products, and how we preserve and extend life of products. And obviously, I mean, whatever the waste that comes out of it, how we use that waste again as a resource. So we, in fact, strive on, I mean, put a lot of work on integrating these principles in these three categories, like redesigning, reducing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, then what you call remanufacturing, repurposing and recycling and recovering. So all these 9R frameworks is very much integrated in whatever the products that we manufacture and the services that we offer. So as I said, I mean, we have actually moved from a traditional linear economic model, which is unfortunately based on a take, make, dispose approach, to a circular economy where resources are kept in use for as long as possible, waste and pollution are minimized, and products and materials are recycled, remanufactured, or repurposed. See, I give a small example in this particular thing, Astra e-bikes. Astra e-bikes is designed in such a way that it consumes the lowest resource footprint. So the amount of raw materials or resources that we use, we redesigned at least more than 20 times in such a way that the weight of the e-bike comes below 20 kilos. Whereas a normal e-bike, which actually goes a range of 80 to 100 kilometers, is upwards of around 30 to 32 kilometers. How we have achieved this one is, I give a small example. The battery is completely manufactured by us. And in a battery, we did not go for a traditional Chinese model of giving it in a plastic casing. We do it in a metal casing, which is recyclable. And even the lithium ion battery pack that we actually use in it, it comes in as a lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt battery. We have an integrated business unit which actually does the e-waste management. So the battery is designed in such a way, once after the life of the battery ends, the customer has no choice. He has to return it to us back. And we have a process to completely recover all the materials and then again put that into repurpose. We can actually remanufacture the battery with the material that is actually collected from it. So that is one example I say. even the other items that we actually manufacture also are completely designed keeping the 9 R's framework in principle, right? And so I would say that, I mean, this circularity principle is definitely a powerful tool in addressing climate change, and it aligns well with the, I mean, the topic of today, that PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, which aims to boost infrastructure development while keeping sustainability at the forefront. So we think that, I mean, I gave only one example from the e-bikes. So we are also working on various areas like where we reduce the carbon footprint, like biochar, seaweeds, regenerative agriculture, millets, manufacturing of cook stoves, and e-waste management. So there are 10 different kinds of solutions which are more focused on decarbonization as well as reducing the carbon footprint. And last but not the least, we have a target of reaching a production of 1 million e-bikes by 2025. By reaching a target of 1 million e-bikes, we will be reducing 0.5 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions.
That's cool. That's really nice, and great entrepreneurial initiatives by you, and great story you have told us. Such insightful information is really helping, audience to understand the changing business model by the firms. Thank you so much, Raja Pradevji.
Thank you.
Rishal sir, we have another question for you. Could you explain on the role of investments in circular economy initiatives and how you work to promote cutting edge investments? As you mentioned also that investments play a very important role. Another context is German Ministry of Finance and Climate Affairs, how they contextualize and how they promote the cutting edge investments into their businesses. Your viewpoint, please.
Yeah, I think I'm going to change the question a bit because my current role is looking and supporting German businesses or service providers, technology providers who are actively seeking opportunities in South or Southern Africa. And I basically link up South African business opportunities with these German partners. But when you talk of the funding perspective and opportunities, I can talk to that because I've been in development finance prior to this for the past 13 or 14 odd years. So really the initiative when you're talking to funding these type of projects is really, when we talk circular economy, it's nice to have and we know of the solutions. But ultimately, when it comes to making these projects bankable, it's economic viability. So it's still seen the same commercial returns as any other typical project finance or commercial finance deal would be considered. So when you're looking at these, you kind of look at kind of out of the box kind of funding and funding mechanisms to promote this. So let me give you a classic example. We know of initially 2008 in South Africa, we reached what is now a common term. We call it load shedding, is when the state utility basically manages the grid and they start limiting the supply of electricity to consumers. So 2008 is when we first had issues. And then there was a great drive by private industry to start now implementing rooftop solar solutions or independent power producers on a larger scale. And like Chris has mentioned, is on the larger scale and the bigger companies, it's fine. It's easier for them to afford it, the cost-benefit analysis. Really, the smaller industries were the ones who were most impacted with this and didn't have solutions. However, the cost of these renewable solutions or circular economy initiatives is unaffordable. So what we looked at is some creative funding mechanisms. And one such example of this was we looked at a utility model where you looked at a potential energy saving solution that would be implemented from a solar or a PV solution. And you amortize the cost of the energy saving over the lifetime of that project, where the result of this is where the end user didn't have to invest any capital investment upfront for the solution. And the savings that they would have incurred from the renewable option was then used to fund the debt, pay off the loan, and these kind of systems. Similarly, one of our Western Cape province a few years back experienced a severe drought, had a huge impact on industries, tourism industries, manufacturing industries, and the likes. The challenge that we have currently, if you look at it from a South African perspective, yes, we are a water scarce country, And despite being water scarce, our cost of water is relatively cheap. And it's so cheap to the impact or to the point of where industries are happy to use potable water, single use, treat it to a suitable quality, effluent quality, and dispose of it. And we've seen, and I use this example of our Western Cape province a few years back when they reached what was now termed day zero, when basically they didn't have enough water in the dams to be able to supply waterworks and ultimately industries, is business need to realize it's not just the cost of what the supply of these resources are at at the current scenario, but more the impact of not having these solutions. So the mindset changes when you're not just looking at what is the cost of potable water to industries, but what is the cost of business if I don't have it? And suddenly there's a different mindset, and the solution towards funding changed in that what is the impact or the justification for funding these initiatives changed when the mindset changed, because the impact to business and the costing thereof changed. So some of these solutions, like I said, it's a mindset change, it's a different alternative funding model, and then what I spoke to earlier is the concessionary type of funding, where you need to start introducing these creative models to make them work.
So right, so correct. We have a very interesting question for you, Vishalji. Sangeeta Mohanty, she asked one question. If sectoral priority was to be given for establishing circular economy for a state, for either of the sectors, including health, education, agriculture, infrastructure, human resource, blah, blah, then what could be the sectoral priority? Can you rank them in terms of investments, capacity building, and the returns on investments? So it has 360-degree question she asked for.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to rank them, but ultimately, if you look at from a priority perspective, I mean, water is a basic need, and it's a commodity. We're aware of the challenges that we currently have in South Africa is in terms of aging infrastructure and the inability to meet the demand. And like I mentioned, we have all of the challenges with climate change, the impacts that has had with different weather patterns. So I think there's a big drive for water infrastructure, water saving initiatives. South Africa, again, I'll harp on the fact because it's an area that's I'm passionate about and close to, is that despite being water scarce and having this aging infrastructure, approximately 45% of the water that is captured through our dams and is treated to potable water quality, 45% of that water doesn't reach the end user. It's considered non-revenue losses. So, and again, that's through aging infrastructure, challenges with not having telemetry to respond on time to burst pipes and the like. So there's definitely a need for investment in that. Like I said, because water is a basic human need. The challenge is how do you invest in this infrastructure? You have private industries who are looking. I mean, we know solutions when it comes to water infrastructure, smart metering, and the likes. But how do you ultimately make these projects bankable? That really is a challenge. And again, that's where you come to creative funding models, where you look at companies now investing in storage solutions, putting the capex up front, amortizing that cost over a period. So water is a priority. We're aware of the energy demands. South Africa at the moment being unable to meet the demands of the country, and that impact that has on economic growth. So there's a big drive for that. And the one important thing is circular economy cuts across all sectors. So South Africa, we're blessed with an abundance of natural resources, but we all know it's a finite resource. The impact of having, mining is a big contributor to economic growth, but we're aware of the challenges that mining has. So I think it's ultimately about how efficiently we are able to use these resources, and the circular economy principles can ultimately be applied across all of the sectors. But for me personally, I would prioritize the renewable energy, the energy demands, and the water side in particular.
Sudhanshuji, if I can take that question, I am Raja Pradeep.
Yeah, please. Raja Pradeep is continuing the same question that Mohanty has asked. Please, sir.
So, whatever the climate change mitigation solutions that we offer, as a part of the best group, see, I mean, we have come across this particular question many times, and while discussing with various state government authorities, and I would detail my experience. It is very much easy to actually implement the circular economy practices in agriculture when compared to any other things like the transportation or HVAC cooling systems or construction, I mean the built environment, etc. How? There are 4 solutions that we are currently working upon, and we have seen the ease of implementing the circular economy solutions in them. The 4 sectors, I mean the 4 areas that we are working currently are biochar, seaweeds, regenerative agriculture, and millets. How these are actually aligned with the circular economy principles in the most easier way when compared to the other sectors, like we operate in transportation also through our e-bikes, right? But how these 4 things are actually aligned with circular economy as far as agriculture is concerned is, see, I'll come to biochar. And for the audience today, I mean, biochar is a carbon-rich material which is created from organic waste through a process called pyrolysis. And it is used as a soil amendment to enhance agricultural productivity and sequester carbon. Now, the utilization of biochar contributes to circularity by repurposing all these organic waste materials into a valuable resource, thereby reducing the need for landfill disposal and sequestering carbon in the soil. So that is the biggest advantage of biochar, which aligns 100% with the principles of circular economy. And when I come to seaweeds, we are currently doing some pilot projects in seaweeds in North Coastal Andhra Pradesh in Bay of Bengal. Around 10 hectares of shallow ocean waters are being used for seaweed cultivation. Why seaweeds? See, seaweeds have applications in carbon sequestration and also can be used in agriculture, food production, and many more, right? So their cultivation and use are a part of circular approach as they contribute to carbon capture while providing a valuable resource across multiple sectors. Now, cultivation of seaweed is unlike how you cultivate other crops. It just grows in the sea. You have to just provide some rafts and have to do some, give some base to that. That's it. You don't need to use any synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, many things that gets emitted into the water, many things that get emitted into the air, polluting water, air, etc. So these things are taken care by seaweeds. Now, the most important thing, the one thing which we have been working with more than 30,000 farmers in North Coastal Andhra Pradesh is regenerative agriculture. With these farmers, we started with chemical farming, then shifted to organic farming, then shifted to natural farming. Now we are adopting regenerative agriculture principles with them. And why? Regenerative agriculture, it focuses on soil health, crop diversity, and it reduces chemical inputs. So by promoting regenerative agricultural practices, we encourage a circular approach to farming where nutrients are recycled, soil is enriched. I need to mention one thing here. Earlier, the organic soil carbon content used to be 2% in India during the time of 1950s, 1960s, when the field measurements were taken. Now it is hardly 0.3% on an average. The nutrient content of the organic content of the soil has reduced like anything. So regenerative agriculture actually fosters recycling of nutrients, enriching of the soil, and sequestering of carbon, all of which are key components in the fight against climate change. And last but not the least, we are one of Andhra's biggest millets value-added products manufacturer also in the food division. And let me tell you, millets are very climate resilient and climate smart crops. We developed value-added products from millets to promote these climate-smart crops and encourage sustainable agricultural practices. So, which aligns with circularity through the responsible use of natural resources. Why I specifically mentioned about millets is that my previous, panel speaker spoke about mindful use of water as a natural resource. Millets, when compared to other cereals like paddy and wheat, only consume 1/10 of water. You require 5,000 liters of water for growing 1 kg of rice, whereas for growing millets like jova, sargam, ragi, etc., you just require around 500 to 600 liters. So there is a very responsible use of natural resources like water, which are aligning with the circular economy. So my preference is to go for investments in agriculture, educating in agriculture to move towards millets, biochar, seaweeds, and regenerative agriculture for aligning with the circular economy paradigm shift.
Nice, nice. That is really true. And for the economy like India, where we are celebrating
It's an
millet.
agriculture economy, right? So
Yes, so
50% of the
it
people
makes
depend on
sense that
agriculture.
circularity should be the part, and when it comes to getting fuel from biochar and other possible avenues, uh, doing conducting research on such areas make great sense, and the companies are doing it in a very larger pace. Yeah. So let us take the discussion to the next level. We have with us Mr. Chris. The question to Mr. Chris is on circular economy practices primarily. As we know, sir, that circular economy practices are known to create the economic opportunities also. Could you share some project experiences or use cases where the circular economy models has led to job creation and economic development? Specifically with your area of South African experience that you had.
Thank you. Yeah, not quite South American, but close. Listen, there's a lot of different opportunities. I think if we try to unpack every single one, we could take on the entire day. But let me try and look at some of the key components. And that's if we start to look at the issue around climate change, again, let's understand and focus on where those key problems are. So the key problems are coming out of several different sectors: energy, water, housing and infrastructure, and agriculture. The opportunities around the built environment offer a very interesting, unique opportunity, because when we start to look at simply the current mode of linear thinking with regards to the fact that we're a cement-based industry from a construction perspective, simple economics in a place like South Africa, we use in the region of 20 million tons of cement a year. We manufacture about 13 million tons of that locally in South Africa. The rest we import from other countries. And yet we have a massive waste issue. If you look, about 107 million tons of waste that's produced every year. Some 32 million tons of that is fly ash that comes from the production of energy from coal-based coal-fired power plants. Now, when you start to then look at this big problem, which has now become an environmental issue, because there are billions of tons that are now landfilled in sites right across the country. We've never really looked at that as a key economic opportunity. So how do we resolve the issue of that massive amount of industrial waste that is filling up landfill spaces, polluting groundwater, causing all sorts of dust issues, etc.? And we're starting to look at that now. So for example, there are key opportunities around extracting rare earth metals from fly ash, which could provide billions in income in terms of processing that through simple sort of fluidized bed type systems. But then to take it through the next stage is that one can then look at the utilization of the remainder of that to convert a cement or to convert it into a cement replacement product, such as a geopolymer. And if one doesn't even go the full geopolymer route, one can go towards a hybrid cement or an alkali-based cement replacement. And the reality is that the waste that we're throwing away every year, we could use to create thousands of jobs across the country to produce a low carbon cement. Now, geopolymer is 95% reduction in CO2 emissions, whereas a hybrid cement or hybrid application, some of the buildings we've produced in South Africa have sort of anywhere between 40 and 60% reduction. A lot of the wind turbines, again, we talk about renewable energy, and from a circular economy perspective, is renewable energy green? If we're not looking at the issues around what do we do with the GRPs, with the wind turbines, what do we do with the batteries and the solar panels when they're end of life? So we need to look at a circular economy component from that perspective. But the wind turbines in South Africa recently have been manufactured using a hybrid cement, which means that the base foundations of the wind turbines are using 70, 80% lower CO2 emissions for the infrastructure requirements. And that offsets imports of foreign unsustainable cement products, and it actually saves money and uses local partners and local applications, which creates local jobs, local sourcing and supply, local skills, etc. If we started to look at the reality with regards to the future of a country like South Africa, the simple fact is that we haven't built a majority of the infrastructure that we need by the end of the century. So we've got to try and change the dynamic. And we all know cement is 8% of global emissions by itself. The built environment contributes some 39% of all carbon emissions. And a lot of that is due to issues such as thermally inefficient building systems, not necessarily just the embodied carbon, but also the life of that building and the energy that it consumes or it requires to regulate temperatures. So we've got to change our thinking around that. And there's a lot of stuff around that from a biomimicry perspective, looking at active and passive type systems. But material science is a very critical issue to that. And I think from a perspective of looking at innovation, and I think Rochelle also mentioned the Circular Innovation South Africa, which has also put out a call to look at those kind of innovations, is understanding the opportunity of looking at innovations and getting them to scale. These are all systems that are being done across the world. We work with ICCE, also in terms of the focus that we have with developing a global South coalition, because we need to look at cross-fertilization with regards to technology developments from the global South. India and South Africa are very similar from a socioeconomic dynamic perspective. It makes more sense for us to collaborate on systems as opposed to importing very expensive European type systems. Or we need to look at the localization of those. So when we start to understand the impacts, and that's where we're trying to get the message across, particularly from the African Circular Economy Network perspective, is to educate the different decision makers with regards to what the previous speaker said. How do we look at regenerative agriculture? How do we look at the mobility sector? How do we look at the construction sector? How do we understand, unpack all of these things, but look at them not as pressure points from an environmental or climate perspective, but seriously realistic opportunities from an economic perspective that create jobs and skills locally that are going to bring forth a sustainable future. And that's the way we need to try and change that dynamic. And there are a multitude of examples in that we're looking at now in the regenerative agriculture space, in the construction industry space. One of the biggest alkali cement building in the Southern Hemisphere is built in Cape Town, 22-story building with 58% lower CO2 emissions. It's done. The systems are there. It's how do we scale that? So we look at the fact that we're probably producing 70 to 100,000 tons a month of a particular component as an alternative to cement. What are we doing with the other 31.8 million tons that isn't being used? And that's where we need to start addressing and understanding the opportunities we have in front of us that will scale our economies. So the same would be in India, so to reduce your reliance on imports, to reduce your reliance on virgin extraction of carbonaceous materials for cement production by using the waste materials that are there. All the opportunities are there. The science, the technology is there. And the proof is also available in terms of what jobs can be created, as well as the impact from a localization perspective and the skills development and impact. We've just got to make the change.
So correct, sir. So circular economy is coming up with a lot of opportunities also across the sectors we have. So let us take us to our speakers, Nitin Mishra ji. Nitin Mishra is with Havels, as we know. Nitin sir, we often talk about, packaging, and these days, sustainable packaging solutions are coming up with very much, climate change resilient. So we should share, I will request you to share your experience that how the Havel, being a very, fast evolving company, how they are embracing themselves with the, more climate resilient and sustainable packaging, right? What are the interventions and the initiative that Havel has taken?
Correct. And Shodhan, I want to add something. I will give insight on the Havels, but at an India perspective, I will listen all the speaker conversation. So actually, the main problem at India, everyone only talking about the circularity. So if we want, I can give you a 2 hour and 3 hour lecture on the circularity, but the real implementation is very difficult. The circularity will need to be integrated with your business. So people only writing a book says I can easily give you 100 example on the circularity and implementers, but why the circularity is not integrated with it in manufacturing? That is very important. The reason is the supply chain, second transportation, third is approach, fourth is the technical expertise. At my company, I have 100 of idea on the circularity and I have implemented lots of the work on the circularity. The main at a manufacturing sector side, the main issue is the reverse logistic. Like at India, the reverse logistic concept is not implemented. That's why lots of the circular economy project has not implemented. Second, the regulation enforcement. When the regulatory body does not enforce any company, no person should start on the working on the circularity because it's affect the cost. So if this I see you are working on various projects on the circularity, so if we can bring together on the some sustainable practices like these are the some common sustainable practices for the circularity which implement should adopt by all company, then the circular economy model will be impact. So from the Havel's point of view, we are working on the same direction. So I can give you 3-4 example on the sustainable packaging. After that, I can give you some insight on the circularity because most people are thinking circularity in waste. Circularity at everything. You can bring a circular economy in your manufacturing, bring your circular economy in your water segment, in your emission. So circularity is our like sustainability. You can add sustainability in any domain, sustainable packaging, sustainable finance, sustainable manufacturing, sustainable supply chain. Same as circularity. You can bring the circularity in your daily life. You can bring circularity in waste management. You can bring circularity in manufacturing. So from the sustainable packaging side, we have done lots of the work. So at past, when we are making our PC and washing machine and TV, then the remote will be packed in different packaging. The cell will be packed in different packages. So we had implemented and we had made the molds. So this is the paper-based mold. All the product item will be divided in different chambers, so no packing is required. And we had converted lots of the packaging waste to paper-based packaging. And this paper is not the virgin plastic. So we are getting the recycle content paper waste from the different recycler, and we had implemented the paper waste packaging. Also, we are implemented the honeycomb packaging. We are venture with the different recycler. They are providing the honeycomb material. So we are making the molds. So through these 2-3 initiatives, we have reduced lots of the plastic, and we done a detailed assessment on our manufacturing location, and we listen out how much unwanted packaging is there. At India, the main issue is the unwanted packaging. If you buy any product, then 7 to 8 layer of packaging is required. Some point of view, why I work with the Dower, I work with Honda. So I discuss with the management, if this packaging is not required, why we are integrated the packaging. So some questions are coming from the marketing side. If we don't integrate packaging, maybe the scratch will be coming. Maybe the looks will be not good. So we can easily reduce the packaging consumption, but lots of the marketing and other contribution is also coming. So we had implemented lots of the things like first we done an assessment key. What is the unwanted packaging? Like if I am selling a remote, the packaging is not required on the box side. You can easily pack in a paper-based packaging. So you can easily reduce the plastic packaging. The carbon footprint will be automatically reduced. So same some also from the like wire packaging. At past we had marking a multi-layer film on the box side. So we had eliminated all the plastic packaging. Right now, all wire boxes comes under in paper-based packaging. Same at BOPP tape. At past, we are using the BOPP tape made by PP and other things. So we are done discussing with the packaging team. Maybe some project will be implemented and some project on the pipeline. So we are also coming from the paper-based BOPP tape. The plastic is not required. We are also working from the strengthening and other packaging. So we done a detailed assessment with our sustainability team. We had made some champion on the sustainable packaging whose work is only who daily audited the entire value chain, and they are searching ki this packaging is required or not. Maybe we done some trial projects. Like I gave an example at past I work at Doon. So that time Doon had reduced all the packaging, paper-based packaging in their toothpaste. The toothpaste will be coming at stand basis. Like one stand is available, you can implement 3 paste and you can reduce all the paper-based packaging, all the plastic-based packaging. So we done a pilot project and the response is very good. But some issue also coming from the consumer side. Consumer side, ki the boxes are dirty, the health impact will be coming. So we can easily work out, but we also from when we are doing any project on the sustainable packaging, all the factors will be indicated. So the sustainability department integration of all department alignment is very important. So when the top management is aligned with the sustainability agenda, then these projects easily implemented. And also from the circular economy side, we have done lots of the project like we are manufacturing the electronics items. So small product are comes at different packaging. So at past, if we are making a fan, then 10 component is coming from 10 vendor, and these vendor are send the product in different packaging. So we done an assessment. We had right now what practice we are using. We are collecting these plastic packaging and we again send to these recyclers. We told him new packaging is not required. You send me the plastic item, we had collected and again back to you. You again tagged in the same packaging and same to me. So we created a circular economy and waste management. So the waste practice is also reducing. At past, what we are doing, we are just collecting this packaging waste and we send to any recycler. They will make some new product and they will again go to the new economy. So we had closed this loop. Right now, we are using the trays for the component and other things, same as the paper waste side. When the component is coming in any corrugated box, so lots of the corrugated box is generated in any manufacturing location. So we implemented the same phase. We collected the corrugated waste, we again sent to these vendors. So the box is again moving in a circular economy model. So these are the some basic principles which maybe adopted by all companies, so the waste generation will be reduced. And second,
wish to ask you one very quick question. I mean, it is very
yes,
related to we have multiple partners in the supply chain.
correct.
So any firm supply chain revolves from the collaboration and orchestric effect in the supply chain.
Correct.
So, the climate change and when it comes to circularity altogether, how it is influencing the supply chain, particularly for electric equipments manufacturing companies, Havels or Panasonic or maybe any company, which has they are regularly into design change and they have to have to remain competitive in the market. So they're constantly improving the designs and taking all the suppliers into a common thread. It is really difficult, as I understand. So what is your take on this? How circular economy is coming along with the supply chain and how climate change resilience is coming along?
So Dr. Joshi, when you started any project, like you need to first focus on your critical supplier. Who is the main revenue generator? Like I have a 200 supplier. I cannot start a circular economy project with 200 suppliers. So I first choose who is my top 10 supplier, who are good background on the sustainability. They have the all knowledge about they know what is the circular economy, what is the sustainable packaging. So I had selected 4 to 5 vendor who had affected my entire value chain. Like out of 210 vendor is who supply me more than 80% is spent. So I had work on it and I had provided the education with this team. We are working on how can we reduce the climate impact on the on any product. Like I done the study of scope 1 to 3 and I find out like 26% carbon emission is coming from the purchased goods side. Scope 1, 2 and scope 2 is the only 8 to 9% and scope 3, the 23% is coming from the purchase side. So if your product is not virgin, they are using the recycled content, then you should work on the climate reduction side, like in electronic manufacturing sector, in FMCG, in other segment. The main issue, what are your input material? What is your raw material? If your raw material is sustainable, then you easily achieve the sustainability thing. So like sustainable sourcing is very important. The manufacturer make the product, but they are using the sustainable sourcing. The plastic packaging is coming from sustainable sources. What are their energy sources? What are their fuel sources? How can they reduce the carbon emission? You, as a manufacturing sector, you can easily work on the scope 1 and scope 2, but when the value chain emission is coming, then you should need to work out with the entire value chain. Maybe you can provide the consultancy, you can work together in a circular economy model. When the raw material will be sourced, then you can achieve. So same and circular economy model, you need to be sit with your supplier ki how can we create a circularity, how can we reduce the emission. So we are adopting the same thing. We are first step, we are working with the critical supplier. Maybe after 1 year we will move out to other supplier, and after a couple we will achieve the entire 100% value chain. But right now we are covering our around 80% who is the critical supplier. So we are working on the same model on circularity, on sustainable packaging. We are working. This is our approach, Havells approach for the sustainability.
So nice, well explained, Nitinji. It was a 360-degree understanding about the whole supply chain, how whole supply chain treats, circular economy. We have a small, query from one of the audience, and it is for Raja Pradeep sir. How will you suggest to oil and gas industry how the oil and gas industry is treating circular economy and decarbonization? I believe the audience want to ask this question: how oil and gas industry is treating circular economy and decarbonization practices?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Indeed, I'll make a disclosure here. I'm an ex-oil and gas industry professional. So I worked for Reliance Industries in the very reputed KZ-D6 oil and gas blocks, Krishna Godavari oil and gas blocks. I mean, in the time of 2007, 2008, it was a 1 lakh crore project, right? And so with my experience and thereafter my work in decarbonization and exclusively working with various oil and gas small time players, what I can tell you is, see, the thing is that in oil and gas industry, if we categorize, there are 3 important areas: upstream, midstream, and downstream. So what are upstream, midstream, and downstream segments of any oil and gas industry is? Upstream, it refers to exploration and production of crude oil and natural gas. This is the area where I have worked in the KZ-D6 offshore oil and gas blocks. Midstream is the transportation and storage of crude oil and natural gas through these oil tankers, pipelines, etc. And downstream, it actually refers to the conversion of crude oil and natural gas into thousands of finished products. Example, the Jamnagar oil and gas refinery of Reliance Industries. So, as far as your question is concerned, I do agree that the oil and gas industries are indeed facing significant challenges in transitioning to a circular economy and achieving decarbonization, especially when their primary business itself involves the production of fossil fuels, right? Now, if you look at the climate landscape, the carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, we are currently emitting, the world is emitting around 40 gigatons, that is 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions every year, right? And out of this, from the manufacturing sector, the highest impact, the highest release of carbon emissions is only coming from oil and gas industry, right? So it is very crucial for these industries to adapt to the changing global energy landscape, reduce their environmental impact, and remain sustainable in the long term, right? So if you ask me to suggest the oil and gas companies, how to focus on circular economy and do the decarbonization, I can tell you some 10 to 12 areas where we have recently worked upon, suggesting a client from a oil and gas industry. See, oil and gas industry, they should diversify their energy resources. They should begin diversifying into cleaner and renewable energy resources such as solar, wind, and geothermal. This can help reduce the carbon footprint of the company's operations and obviously contribute to a more sustainable energy future. The most important technology, obviously, I mean, we are not working on this technology because it is extremely costly. It requires to pump billions of dollars into it. The technology-based solution that we have in decarbonization is a technology called CCUS, Carbon Capture, Utilization and Storage. We definitely, advise top oil and gas companies like IOCL, BPCL, the ONGCs, and Reliance Industries to develop and invest in CCS technologies like the American companies like ExxonMobil, etc. ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, etc. What they are currently doing is to invest in CCS technologies to capture and storage carbon emissions from oil and gas production. This can significantly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with fossil fuel extraction and processing. There are a lot of GHG emissions that are done while doing the fossil fuel extraction. So most companies are investing in this CCUS. Now, whatever the common thing that we actually promote is promoting energy efficiency, like implementing energy efficient practices and technologies within the oil and gas operations to reduce energy consumption and emissions. I give a small example. While working for the KZD6 in the upstream oil and gas drilling, we were drilling into subsea at a depth of around 3,000 to 3,500 meters in the deep seas, right? So there are a lot of emissions because of these operations itself. So there is a lot of emissions that are done during the drilling techniques and the equipment that are used for extracting the oil and gas. So now there is an impetus that is created on transitioning to energy efficient operations while doing the oil and gas extraction, activities. Like, we are now currently working with 4 different oil and gas rig companies like Baker Hughes, Weatherford, etc. And this is where we are currently concentrating upon. Hello?
We are audible.
Yeah, sorry. So, one more thing is, how we can actually integrate circularity principles in this one is, as far as oil and gas industry is that, by focusing on circular resource management, by reusing, recycling, or repurposing materials and components in the oil and gas supply chain itself. Obviously, this approach can reduce waste and lower the need for fresh materials or virgin resources, in fact, right? And the most important thing is, these days, in 6 months back, there was National Green Hydrogen Mission that was introduced by Government of India. And there is a support of some around $2 billion, for this particular mission. The oil and gas industry should definitely, explore the production and use of green hydrogen, which is generated using renewable energy resources. Green hydrogen can serve as an energy carrier for various industrial applications and transportation. I was talking about the downstream activity. I was talking about the midstream activity, right? Midstream activity actually involves the transportation of the fossil fuels, the crude oil, etc., through oil tankers, then pipelines, etc. So all this industrial transportation, it can be done using green hydrogen as an energy carrier, which offers a more sustainable alternative to fossil fuels, right? And another most important thing is they should focus on reducing methane emissions. So methane is one of the most potent greenhouse gas. So when you compare it with carbon dioxide, methane is at least powerful 86 times over a period of 20 years when compared to carbon dioxide, right? So considering the potentiality of methane as a greenhouse gas, we need to, oil and gas industry, they need to improve the leak detection and repair process and equipment upgrades for minimizing these emissions. Now, if you ask any oil and gas industry, they talk about in the midstream, the leakages of the pipelines. So all these pipeline leakages lead to methane emissions. So that is the biggest problem that they are facing. So many companies get into detection of these leakages through drone surveillance, etc. Right. So reducing the methane emissions through some sustainable and circular practices. This is one of the most important factors that have to be looked into. So these 5-6 practices, are extremely important for oil and gas industries towards a decarbonization path.
Great answer. I think you explained everything about the oil and gas industry when it comes to managing carbon emission and processing and approaching for decarbonization as a whole. So let us continue with this domain only. Let us talk about renewable energy projects. And I have a question with Richelle about circular economy strategies. And we understand that the circular economy strategies often involve renewable energy projects. And we wish to understand at our audience what are the challenges and opportunity that most of the initiative on renewable energy is facing when it comes to circular economy.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, again, my response is going to be limited to my experience in South Africa. But if you look at our current plan and the situation with our renewable energy independent power producer program, as well as some of the private IPP programs that have been put in place, there's talk of approximately 26 gigawatts of renewable energy projects that have been implemented. The challenge that you have with the implementation of these projects is our electrical energy supply and generation has been dominated by our state-owned utility. And with that aging infrastructure, as well as the generation capacity, the grid network is severely constrained because you're sitting with this situation where you've got legacy coal-powered power plants being located obviously close to the coal reserves. And now as we migrate to renewable energy sources, the supply of these renewable sources, in our case in Northern Cape or Eastern and Western Cape for your wind projects, Northern Cape and the solar projects, the demand isn't there. And the grid hasn't been designed or factored in to accommodate the input of these renewable sources. So you face now with the constraint that the grid doesn't have the capacity to take in this, whilst we're blessed with the abundance of solar irradiation resource in particular provinces, we have this challenge. More so when it comes to now then also alternative forms of energy. So apart from the solar and the wind, we also have alternative, because the challenge that you have with these is you aren't able to supply the baseload demand that you need to. So we're starting to see some of the projects now with larger scale battery storage, but also there's a migration and a need for alternative energy. So we have a biogas or landfill gas projects, compressed biogas, looking at alternative fuels on the mobility side. There's a big drive, Chris has mentioned earlier, on the hydrogen and the hydrogen economy, and lots of work being done on that side, looking at it. And I think if you look at hydrogen specifically, the biggest demand is forecast now on the mobility side, where it can be used as an alternative fuel source. So we're seeing a big drive for that. And then on the alternate smaller scale, like I said, I spoke on the biogas side. We have several years of experience having worked on the waste, and that's where the circularity comes in, is municipal solid waste, all of these organic waste streams, be it on manure, on food waste, organic, various types of organic streams that can be utilized when put into anaerobic digestion and used now either as dual fuel or dedicated fuel vehicles for our buses, taxis, and other types of vehicles.
Thank you so much, sir, for such insightful information about. So we're continuing with one very important perspective, and the perspective is about the water footprints reduction and recycling, and how the innovation plays a role in it. Because if we talk about climate change, water recycling become a key element for attaining the sustainability and putting things into circularity. So I have a question with Nitin Mishra ji, and the same question will goes to every host today. And the question is, let me constitute in a question form. Can you please give us your expertise in water footprint reduction and recycling, and what sort of strategies or projects that you implemented at your firm, particularly in the company you belonged, or the experience you had with a variety of companies, when it comes to water related sustainability challenges, capturing those challenges, and reducing the carbon footprints out of it?
Correct. So, Dr. Joshi, water is my main interesting subject. So, after starting my career, I started my career as a project engineer in water and wastewater. So, around 5 years, I made a lot of the ETP and STP in different segments. So, so I feel the main issue in water management at company level. So I work with various company. I working in projects. So I have a working experience in water segment around 100 company. All big company I see in the water segment. The main issue is India. People are designing the project on a mixed basis. Like I give an example in any manufacturing company, the waste is generated from three parts. One waste coming from your manufacturing side. This is the effluent. This is the main chemical contaminated waste. Second waste is coming through your utility services like boiler, cooling tower, that's of it. And third waste is coming from your like your sewage, like people are hand washing toilets. So if but right now in many company people are mixing all the waste. They are collecting all the waste, then they install a system and treated the water. So the water quality cannot be achieved because you are mixing the biological contaminated waste, you are mixing the chemical contaminated waste, and you are mixing only the TDS and TSS available waste. If you separate the waste at category level, like the utility water only have the hardness and TSS. No chemical contamination is available. You can easily install some treatment system. You can easily remove the TSS, maintain the pH, and again this you can reuse this water easily in any application. Apart from sewage, you can treat the water and you can use in gardening, in toilet flushing, and other purposes. But when the highly contaminated waste is available that have a higher BOD and COD, the recycling is very difficult. So the utility water you can easily treat and use in your any application. I work in food industry, so generally the issue is coming. People are saying if you are using the ETP treated water in cooling tower and other, maybe it will impact on the food quality. So the issue man in all manufacturing location, people are mixing all the waste. After that, they're making a system, treat this water, and then they are searching ki how can we reuse this water in our manufacturing location. So the only 3 to 4 constant is available. Mostly companies using the treated water in toilet flushing. You download all the company sustainability report, all the water report, and collect the information how many function you are using the recycled water. Mostly companies using the recycled water in toilet flushing. Only few companies they are using the recycled water in cooling tower. They are using this water in boiler. They are using this water as a cooling resource in machine cooling and other aspect. So the segregation of water, like at waste management, we segregate the waste. So same as water management, the segregation of water entity is very important as per your parameter. Every effluent have a, not a single property. The pH, people first you know what is the pH, what is the TSS, what is the TDS, what is the nitrate, what is the chloride. Apart from their water quality, should design the system. Mostly people are thinking we install the JLD system, but why really you require JLD system? Really you require the RO plant, really you require the ultrafiltration. So the water methodology knowledge is very important. And mostly corporate and mostly company people are don't thinking on the same base because at, if we install any manufacturing, first we are making the roads. So if you first making the entire pipeline, so the segregation is very important. But at in all manufacturing location, we first build all the basement. Then we are thought that this RO reject will where we should divert it this RO reject water. We don't have a supply chain. So the integration from the project side is very important. So maybe same I give an example I discussed in CIA conference for the water neutrality. Like in lots of the corporate building, the treated water is coming and they are discharging into the public sewer. But maybe this water can be reused by any other building. Maybe your treated water will be resourced from other company. So the integration is required. Circularity in water management is also required. Maybe my treated water will be used by any company.
So true.
In a steel company, in any company, my treated water will be, they will use as a raw water because they required water from the cooling application. So I give an example. I work with in a soda ash project at Devbhumi Dwarika. So they are using 21,000 meter cube water on a hourly basis from the sea, and mostly around 50,000 water they are using for the cooling purpose. So this is the one-through cooling system. So they are just maintaining the 34-degree water, and they are mixed up with the high segment water. The heat exchange will be coming through the one-through cooling water system. So the water quality is not important for these applications. You can usually use some you can usually the treated water in other applications like heat exchange and other purposes. Same at emission point of view, people have the chimney and other things, and they are emitting the lot of the SOx and NOx. But it really required, can we install some air scrubber? Can we install some wet scrubber to reduce the impact on the environment? Maybe we can reuse and recover the heat which we are emitting from the chimney and stacks. So lot of the things are going, maybe some good document and some good practices will be coming at India, and people like Niti Aayog has recently released the water neutrality guideline. Maybe some guideline coming from the circular economy in water management. Maybe my water will be used by any municipality. Why I am discharging my treated water at sewage? This water is again go to any nala and pond, and this is really again recontaminated. So, so the integration is very required. Maybe government and this type of concept will be coming. Maybe they can make a separate industrial line, like potable water supply line is different and treated sewage treated water line will be different. At any society, maybe so a lot of the infrastructure is required. Maybe from the upcoming building and these type of project, they will implement the same thing.
Yeah, very right. So Nitinji is very right about how the water sustainability can be improved and how water wastewater can be recirculated. So I have a question, the same question with a little flavor on the role of innovation. This is the question to Mr. Chris. How do you see the role of innovation in waste beneficiation and management when it comes to low carbon circular economy? The role of innovation, for the countries like India or South Africa, innovation plays a very important role because the major players are the SMEs. So how waste beneficiation and management can be done through good innovation techniques?
Thank you, Joshi. I think we really need to understand that innovation holds the key for a sustainable future, for a just transition, and also for the incorporation and scaling and output of circular applications across the different sectors. So whether we're looking at that from looking and understanding the waste issues, which is, again, a very simplistic view of what circular economy is all about, down to looking at issues around innovation in packaging, such as redesign, such as reduction components, and also looking at issues around digitalization and empowering components around collection systems through blockchain analyses and blockchain systems. There are so many different ways that we could look at innovation. What we need to critically look at, I think, particularly around innovation, is that we need to look at our more specifically, not just our tertiary education, but we need to start looking and bringing it in at secondary education level, is to start getting people to start thinking differently and understanding the circular economy and looking at the opportunity of innovation, not only in terms of the opportunity for saving the planet, but the opportunity for future careers and future career paths. So we've got to try and push the issues around science and innovation. That's why policy is critically important, but also it needs alignment between different government departments. And critically, we need the knowledge sector to start converting very strongly into changing from pure research into applied research, to ensure that some of the great ideas that do happen at the universities ultimately become bankable projects. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to move in that direction. I think the universities over the last 30, 40 years have become more like sausage factories pumping people out there than they are looking at the critical skills that are required for future-proofing our planet. So we need to look at those different opportunities, and there are some critical things that are happening. Rochelle mentioned the Circular Innovation South Africa. There are different platforms, there are different incubations, there are different accelerators. Those are all very useful. But critically, if we want to get to scale, to really make a change, is we need to start aligning conventional or standard finance to looking at sustainable project development. And only through the development of getting these things to scale will they then become more mainstream, as opposed to sometimes seen as little impact investments or nice to haves. And I think we've got to change that mindset. So innovation is not only needed in the sector with regards to understanding technology, it's also needed with regards to understanding digitalization, finance, looking at the alignment of government structures and policy. So innovation is going to stretch right across all of those different components. And if we don't bring them all together, we're going to miss the boat. And that's where it's critically important, through the work like the ICCE is doing, like ASIN is doing in Africa, is bringing together those thought leaders through platforms such as this as well, which allows us to educate, inform, and change minds, because we need to address the opportunity specifically around the SME sector. As I said, I keep coming back to the just transition. The just transition, if you look at the economies of South Africa and India, are largely controlled by the SME sector, and most of your employment's in the SME sector. We need to empower that SME sector. They need to become independent in terms of their own power provision, independent in terms of their own water security, food security. We've got to stop reliance on mass scale systems that are non-sustainable, and bring basically power back to the people in terms of ensuring that we all look forward to a sustainable future.
Right. So stakeholders collaboration is required. Yeah, and successful collaboration, as you've said, is requirement of the hour. So I have a similar question with Mr. Richel, who is the member with the Technical Advisory Group of Circular Innovation in South African countries. What is the strategic approach you suggest when it comes to initiating circular economy practices into any developed or underdeveloped country?
Yeah, I think Chris has touched on it. Really, the initiative, for example, with the Circular Innovation South Africa or other initiatives, is really to promote the circularity, develop a strategic framework or a roadmap, and then looking at the various role players and actors and really trying to look at how we can bring these parties together to look at, Chris has rightly said, in my experience in the past has shown, this silo mentality where you would have different municipal or national or provincial entities working in silos and not collaborating together is a challenge. So I think the real intention here is bringing parties together, looking at innovation, but not innovation for the purpose of innovating, like Chris has rightly said. It's really to develop sustainable, bankable, economically viable solutions. So where you have new and innovative product that really shows promise for upscaling and for reaching scale, the use of the recent launch of CE demonstration fund to encourage and promote the adoption of this and to make these projects more viable, where they see the potential of these. So the role is really to promote innovation, to collaborate between partners, and ultimately to drive the strategic roadmap for the country in terms of the medium to long term.
So correct, so right. And how, Raja, you perceive and envision the role of technology and innovation in supporting circular economy efforts when it comes to a variety of sectors that you already witnessed as a part of your career. You work with a lot of companies which are into oil and gas, and you often talk about, in your deliberation also, you discuss about millet as the future crop. How you see the role of technology and innovation in the areas?
Yeah. Certainly, see, I work across various sectors, ranging from agriculture, food processing, then mobility, and various other decarbonization principal sectors, right? So across these sectors, the common thing that I find is there is a lot of scope that is still left, even after leveraging the latest changes in the technology field in the last 10 years or so, as well as by leveraging artificial intelligence in doing technological changes in the designs, which can trigger a huge impact in reducing the impact on the environment, etc. Right now, I give a small example from my experience in the millets field. Right, and in millets, the kind of processing machines that we have and the kind of processing technology that we have, when compared to processing something like cereals like wheat and paddy, are I would say less than 5%. I mean, the amount of processing capacity that we have. And why? We could not actually do that much amount of innovation or put a lot of emphasis on the R&D in what do you say, doing processing of millets at a scale. If I give a small example in terms of numbers, the amount of millets processing that we do is in an hour, it is around 0.5 tons to 1 ton per hour. Whereas large scale paddy processing, rice mills can do even up to 50 tons to 100 tons per hour also. So there is a difference in the processing technology itself, wherein by almost 50 times to 100 times, and we are looking at various options and working with various research institutes also to bring sea and paradigm shifts in the processing area. How this is going to help us is, see, in millets, there is almost, in millets processing, we are getting almost 38 to 42% of wastage. Whereas in rice industry, it only amounts to around 4 to 5% only. If I take an example of, like, say, jowar or sorghum, if I use 100% as a raw material input, I only get 55 to 58% as recovery. 42 to 45% actually goes as a waste. And there is so much of thing that has to be done in reviving this technology. All this leads to generation of a lot of waste and impacting the principles of circularity. Right. I mean, reducing the waste or improving the processing technology will enhance the circularity principle at least multiple times. Right. And food is one of the most important constituent industry in India. I mean, there are more than 50 million people who are dependent upon the food industry. And there are more than 20 lakh units who are into small and medium enterprises in food industry itself. So the amount of waste that is generated from various areas of foods like millets, etc., are not helping us the cause. Right. So there is a lot of innovation that is required in the food area. And the most important problem I want to mention here is where we are addressing for the last 3 to 4 years. See, we are working with a research institute funded by the government of India called IIMR, Indian Institute of Millets Research. Even we have taken the same problem with them. Why we are lagging when compared to a paddy industry or a wheat industry, right? So the problem here is there are two things. One, very insufficient amount of funds are put in the technology and the innovation, technology development and the innovation side, as far as developing the processing technology is concerned, from the government as well as the private parties also. The amount of R&D that is put is hardly between 0.5 to 1.25% only. If this can be increased to 5%, there will be a huge difference that will be created in the processing technology and reducing the wastage, number one. Number two is commercialization of the process patents. Right. I mean, there are so many processing technologies that are developed by national institutes, like national, like this, the same Indian Institute of Millets Research. Now, how many entrepreneurs how many large private companies are actually coming forward to take this technology, implement them at a large scale, and trying to produce products which obviously inherently has reduction of wastage as one of the principles in them. The recovery is very, very high. By putting 100% of raw material, they can actually produce a product of 90%. Only 10% will be wastage. But most of the companies are looking at a lot of focus on, they're putting a lot of focus on the economic viability in the initial phase itself, saying that we don't want to actually transition to a new technology. We want to continue with our older technologies. Who is going to fund us, or who is going to put the capital in these new technologies and all that? So these kind of things are inhibiting so many production companies to transition to a efficient production processing technology. Now, the only solution for this particular problem is government should come up, and while they are actually commercializing these kind of technologies, these kind of new age production technologies, they should give subsidies and interest subventions or interest subsidies, as well as capital subsidies to those entrepreneurs or micro, small, medium enterprises who are adopting these new age production technologies that will reduce wastage, that will improve the production efficiency, that will also use more energy efficient machines for doing this processing. So
Thank you
these
so
two
much.
areas have to be looked into.
Yeah, very right. Thank you so much, Rajaji. And since we have our great round of discussion today, it was very insightful. And in the whole discussion for today's panel discussion as a part of the whole webinar series, we explored various facets of circular economy and the impact of carbon footprints, the impact of circular economy on the carbon footprints. And as we have learned out of the discussion, variety of cases are being discussed, variety of experiences are being shared by our experts, Mr. Nitin Mishra, Chris White, Rachel, Raja Pradeep. And as a part of the proceeding, before we conclude, I encourage all of you to continue this conversation and take action to your respective sphere of influence as individual, businesses, government, or maybe as a researchers, to support collective and to make collective efforts when it comes to circular economy and to build a sustainable and resilient future. So as the part of word of thanks, I invite Surabhi to take up and give the word of thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sudhanshu, for this moderation. What an interesting moderation that you have done, and it was an insightful discussion. I want to thank all the speakers, Mr. Rochelle, Chris, Nitin, and Mr. Pradeep, for being here on behalf of International Circular Economy. I thank you all. We are surely enlightened, and let's click a picture together quickly. I would request all the speakers to turn on their camera for a while so that we can capture this moment. We'll take 1 minute for this. Can we turn on all our cameras? Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And yes. So I would like to extend my thanks to the wonderful audience also that we had. If you have any queries unanswered, you may write to me on surbi@icce.com. The email ID is provided in the chat box. Our next topic of discussion will be the circular economy and social responsibility. How can we ensure that all stakeholders benefit from this model? This webinar will be held on 10th of November. Keep following our social media pages to receive more information on all the upcoming events. You can also subscribe to our newsletter for the same. The link is there in the chat box again. Thanks a lot again, everyone. Wish you all a very happy festival season. Do enjoy the celebrations on the weekend. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.